Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. We are talking about Episode 2, Season 4 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The Griffin Incident. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Bob, you always say this is a very special episode. This is a very special episode of Strange New World Star Trek.
I should have said very spooky episode
Uh,
of Strange New Worlds.
spooky. The end of July.
That's
Yeah.
what's going in The Griffin Incident. Matt, just to start off with the really important stuff, man, these shuttles look huge.
It threw me for a loop, Bob. I almost felt Paul Wesley and the other actors and actresses couldn't be on the set at the same time, and they had to put them in one panel and in the other panel. They're all in one window.
Yeah.
They're separated by a giant window in the middle. Where's this giant window in the middle of the shuttlecraft coming from?
I'm mostly just joking about it, but yeah, it's funny to imagine watching Galileo 7, that great original series episode, and then coming to this, right?
Their shuttles are much smaller in the original series. I don't know what happened between Strange New Worlds and TOS, but shuttle's definitely downsized.
They definitely downsized. Starfleet went through a round of austerity in between the Griffin incident and Galileo 7. Also, that while we are watching Paul Wesley as Kirk and Spock and La'an through the massive windows of this massive shuttlecraft, was I the only one who thought that Paul Wesley was mugging to the screen a bit like Bruce Campbell?
He was totally mugging at the screen.
I'm not even saying it's wrong that he was doing it. It was
Going back to the look or aesthetics of that scene, really was trying to go ahead and start off invoking that fear and horror. That may be why they made the shuttlecraft seem so large and empty.
it's important to make the characters feel small. Yeah.
As we're talking about it, I get it now. Okay. Yeah, that's what they were going for. And they're looking out in the emptiness of space with all the broken stuff, and then you see the ship, the Griffin. They do a good job of making ships look derelict.
They do.
Back in the
No
day, you didn't have
discovery.
that. It was the same model, but one part broken.
Unusual.
Yeah, upside down. These ships look legit destroyed. And you're okay, that's what a haunted ship would look like. Not something I want to visit.
So I wanted to ask, because I honestly don't remember. I know we've talked about La'an having a relationship with Kirk and a relationship with Spock, but have we talked about the fact that La'an is hooking up with both before?
Okay, it's so funny that you are pointing this out because it hit me during this episode as well when I was watching it. Because Kirk and La'an had a thing until Kirk was, I'm with Carol, I'm having a kid, I'm having David, all this stuff, and I'm a
And
daddy
correct me
now.
if I'm wrong, but wasn't it the first time it was La'an met Kirk in a different timeline? And they
Correct.
really hit it off.
Yes.
And then when they met for the second time for La'an, they had chemistry, but he had to be, yeah, I'm with Carol. Yeah.
So really, she hasn't really been with Kirk, this Kirk.
But there's just been acknowledged chemistry between them, I guess would be the way to
Correct.
say it.
We know she'd totally be down to be with Kirk.
Yeah, if Spock wasn't in the picture, at least. I did enjoy that Kirk is such a player that he doesn't take getting played like this personally. He brushes it right off. I enjoyed that.
That didn't bother him one bit. I will say though that Kirk is a weird father. The toy he decided to bring David, what is that? Who brings the kid a wind-up toy and what century are we in?
Okay, so it's establish it later in conversations between Jim and Sam Kirk that it's what Jim's father and Sam's father George would do. So he's imitating his father.
Bringing him a toy, I get it, it's fine, but it's the toy itself.
It's not just a toy, it's a specific sort of tchotchke. Like,
El Tchotchke robot thing.
maybe not the robot in particular, but a little tchotchke. Sam talks about having a chest full of
Oh,
things, like
okay.
yeah,
His
yeah.
adventures. A collection of adventures to replace his dad's presence. I gotcha.
While we're talking about Kirk as absentee father, this is me gonna be a little bitter, but it's already really bad. I think if you're in your late 20s or your early 30s, which is I think the age range of what Kirk, La'an, and Spock all are,
Right.
going to something called the Future Federation Leaders Summit, that's already really cringe. It's really undignified. You're not in high school. You're not in college. What are you? But the fact that you're going to this undignified little model United Nations thing and you're not seeing your kid, oh man, that's rough. Don't do that instead of seeing your kid, Jim. That's bad.
Bob, Kirk can't network with his kid.
Yeah, Kirk needs to brown nose in person. All right.
If he wants to be captain of a starship, he's got to know people that can get him there. And that little kid can't get him there, Bob.
I'm sorry. Is his son a rear admiral, Matt?
I don't know what kind of doctoring Carol Marcus does, but it ain't going to get him on a ship.
It's the kind of doctoring that allows you to build a doomsday weapon. The other thing
Whew.
we see in Kirk's bag, Matt, is a Patrick O'Brien novel. Have you ever heard of Patrick O'Brien, or have you seen the movie Master and Commander with Russell Crowe?
I'm familiar with Master and Commander, but I've never read that novel.
The Horatio Hornblower series is a series of novels about a first an officer, then a captain in the British Navy during the Napoleonic War by C.S. Forrester. They're pretty popular back in the middle 20th century, and they were a big influence on Star Trek. Roddenberry liked them, talked about them sometimes as an influence on Kirk's character and the sort of British naval traditions of Star Trek. Then Patrick O'Brien is a late 20th century writer, and he's writing similar things of British Navy ventures during the Napoleonic War. But this is what I thought in high school. I'm not sure if I would think this now because I'm a much better reader now. But in high school, I read several Horatio Hornblower, C.S. Forrester novels, and I tried to read a Patrick O'Brien novel. And my impression of the Patrick O'Brien novel in high school was that it was a novel written to be read by someone from the early 1800s by me in high school, and I gave
Oh,
up on it. I'm not sure if that's a correct estimate or if I was just a stupid high schooler, but that is my memory, is that the Patrick O'Brien novels are very dense novels about the British Navy and the Napoleonic War. But that said, around about 2005, they made a pretty good, at least in my memory, movie that adapts one of the later Patrick O'Brien novels where Russell Crowe plays his series. And that movie's called Master and Commander. I haven't seen it since it was in theaters. Maybe it doesn't hold up, but a lot of people are very fond of it.
yeah. And Kirk's reading that novel, huh?
I think we already know that Kirk likes C.S. Forrester, the guy who's the sort of template, although not as difficult to read as Patrick O'Brien. So, yeah, that's what he's reading. A lot of books this season, because last episode Pike was talking about reading Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars novels.
You think this is advertisement for books?
I hope so.
Think this is going to get people to libraries?
Do you know that Zoomers apparently make fun of people for reading in public and call it performative?
That's dumb.
As we veer into our future of illiteracy, I guess one other thing, Matt, there is a USS MLK. I think La'an references it, and that's cool. We're on the Griffin. It's deserted. A lot of spooky stuff is going down. Spooky camera angles. We're hearing whispers in the darkness. We're hearing David whispering to his dad, Jim, his absentee dad, Jim, who's going to network with a rear admiral instead of seeing him. But really, it escalates when Spock is in the sick bay and we have T'Pring rise up out of a body bag. And when we're first seeing T'Pring, Matt, did you assume that horror movie logic had transported T'Pring from Vulcan? Or were you thinking this is just a hallucination from Spock's mind?
From the get-go, I thought it was a hallucination. I had no doubt. I knew we needed to bring T'Pring back somehow just to have her, because we haven't seen her in a while, and she's been featured in every season at this point, I believe, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
would have to check, but that sounds right to me.
She was
At
in the
least
wedding
one.
episode last season, but I knew from the get-go this was all hallucinations. This was going to be one of those episodes where we're, what's real, what's not, what's actually happening, what's not happening, what are they seeing in their minds, what are they not, which played into the fun of it and really gave us some pretty dramatic scenes, some pretty thrilling scenes.
My expectation was also she was a hallucination, but as they kept going with it, part of me did start wondering if they weren't going to do something a little more fantastical, right? And have her having been transported, but yeah, obviously that didn't play out. It is fun that maybe this is wrong, but I feel all the T'Pring episodes we've seen to this point have been the screwball comedy episodes. And
Yes.
so it is fun, even though this is obviously hallucination T'Pring, it's fun to see her in a horror episode rather than a comedy episode. Also, given that T'Pring is T'Pring, has a reserved affect regardless of the situation, but just seeing her affect and performance in a different situation is quite fun.
I was glad that they brought her back for this particular episode, and I don't know if we'll see her again this season.
I expect we'll see her at least one more time before the show's over. And this is jumping way, way ahead, and we'll circle back to other stuff. But when we have Spock having a conversation with Chapel at the end after getting off the Griffin about T'Pring, right? This episode actually does a lot of work to, at least on Spock's side, to repair the relationship, because it's okay, Spock is associating T'Pring with logic, right? And the way of logic and the way to logic. So it explains, which is maybe something I wasn't thinking about that much, but it explains that why he would be willing to go to T'Pring, which I think prior episodes of the show with T'Pring wouldn't really explain, right? You watch the prior episodes of Strange New Worlds with T'Pring, and you're like, yeah, why would she and Spock ever get back together, right?
It sets up TOS nicely as well. because we've got to start moving in that direction.
So we have to have a more logical Spock as well. And so this experience is pushing Spock that.
All they had to do was cut off his ears, Bob.
Good thing Chapel can give Spock an ear repair house call. Also, did it feel maybe a booty call too?
Possibly.
Some people in the reviews were saying that it felt a booty call. Well, Matt, to get back into the middle of the horror plot, once T'Pring showed up, did you think it was likely that we might see Carol or David Marcus, or we might see Kid Khan? I assumed that would be the person La'an would tend to hallucinate, Kid Khan. But they didn't go that direction. But I thought once they spent so much time with T'Pring and the episode kept going, I was, maybe they'll bring in another.
I was surprised we didn't see Carol and David as much as they were talked about. I did think there was more of a chance we could possibly see David when Sam starts hearing his own kid.
That's a good call. Then, Matt, we see a lot of zombie Andorians on the Griffin, and I just wanted to observe that makes me a little bitter that we don't have an Andorian crew member on the Enterprise right now. I'm bitter about that. We get the hallucination of the away team, the landing party, come to rescue La'an, Spock, and Kirk, and hallucinated number one never liked T'Pring, which is something I could see actual number one saying, so maybe happy.
When the crew shows up, that's when I thought maybe that was supposed to be real.
And people on Serialized had different opinions about this episode. Some people think it really worked. Some people think it really didn't. I felt like it was always pretty obvious that it was all hallucination. But that said, I felt, for me, the episode did a good enough job of making me somewhat second guess my easy and ultimately correct assumption that it was all hallucination, because they spent so much time with T'Pring and so much time with the hallucinated landing party that it did feel real.
Yeah. Once the landing party went psycho, that's when I knew it wasn't. But when they first arrived, I was, okay, now we're going to shift and they're going to figure out what this is and the crew's going to solve the mystery and we'll be done. But that's not what happened. It ultimately ended much more interestingly than what I expected.
Indeed. Speaking of the crew going psycho, Matt, did you enjoy Sam Kirk having a grisly death for the first or second time, depending on how you count it?
Yeah, and that is actually why he's my character of the week, Bob. That death, man. Whew. That was weird. Getting sucked out into space like that through a window. Ugh.
That was gross and cool, and I enjoyed it. I did think the thing they did with the things Sam Kirk says to his kids when he Skypes them before bed, that was a little overdone. That could have been cut down a little. But, the actual goriness of the death, that was effective.
I don't know. A part of that, him saying all that stuff to his kid at night, though, makes me think of just how melodramatic Kirk is in general. So, it runs in the family. He's that melodramatic with his kid at night.
Putting a lot on your kids. Although it also raises the question of, is that actually what Sam says to his kids?
Or just what Kirk interprets it as what his brother would say to his kid?
Or is it just whatever the entity on the Griffin thinks would somewhat unnerve Jim, but also would sound plausible? So I guess, there's those dimensions to it.
The idea, though, is that the entity gets in their head, so it would be from Kirk's head.
You haven't seen the Russian or the American Solaris, right?
No, I haven't.
The American one with George Clooney is not very good, but the original Russian one from the early 70s is one of the best science fiction movies ever made. And the Russian director Tarkovsky didn't like 2001, and it's a bit his rejoinder to Stanley Kubrick's 2001, so it's interesting in that way. But films are amazing. But the thing that's going on in Solaris is the Star Trek-like crew is on a station orbiting a planet that's an ocean, and the planet is alive and telepathic, and it's sending basically ghost or doppelgangers to the station that are people that are taking the form of people that the crew love, and it's trying to interact with them through the people through these doppelgangers that it's sending to the station. But it's very ambiguous in the novel and in the film. Is the planet actually trying to communicate with the people through these doppelgangers? Or is the planet just responding in the same way that I touch you in a certain way and you move out your hand in a reflex? So there's a real debate of, okay, so the planet's alive and it's intelligent, but is it intelligent in the same way we are? And does it conceptualize us as other intelligences? Or is this just an automatic response of a giant telepathic brain? And that's a little bit maybe what's going on here. The question is, how much is the whatever entity that we don't understand takes over the Griffin, how much is it trying to torment the landing party versus how much is it just playing with them or just reflex responding to them?
Yeah, just trying to see what to get out of them. it just increases the level of horror in this episode. Now, I did like this grisly death, but all of the other elements of gore and the cutting, and they called it torture porn back in the day.
It sounds like it's less the gore and more the actual cutting that's your objective.
That's what bothered me the most about the episode. I didn't like that. They have fun on this show. So I'm sure they had a great time having number one slice your stomach open like that and everything just come flying out and getting to see Spock's ears actually hacked off the way they were with the green blood. It's visually horrifying. It doesn't fit the Trek motif so much, and that's where I get a little lost.
I do think there is, especially in the original series, more so than Next Gen. There's a strong tradition of horror episodes in the original series, but the original series is made before Night of the Living Dead, mostly, and it's definitely made before Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Exorcist and Halloween. So I think it makes sense to revisit Star Trek horror, but with more modern, gory horror sensibility.
And had the disgusting, gory stuff going on. I'm going to remember that episode for that. Kind of like I remember that episode of Next Gen where Troy was a cake and got cut.
Oh, yeah, that is horrifying. It is funny that you're not such a fan of all the cutting in this episode, but then your character of the episode is Sam Kirk for his grisly death. Then my character of the episode is the hallucination Pike because he's just basically Hannibal Lecter, but with that same jolly Pike affect.
He didn't really have to say much either. That was what was great.
Yeah.
At one point, they cut to a different scene, but before they do, they just focus the camera on Pike for about 3 or 4 seconds of him just making this face. And that was one of my favorite scenes in the episode because he's hamming it. Anson Mount's loving it. You could tell he loves doing this. I'm good with that. It was interesting. I wanted every episode. Do I want him to revisit this horror thing again? Probably not. But for one episode, I'm okay with it.
And Anson Mount seems to like being the lead on TV shows. He seems to be enjoying this role. I haven't seen his Western Hell on Wheels, but my impression is he had a good time on Hell on Wheels. My impression is he wanted Inhumans to work. He really worked on Inhumans. I want the man to have a successful career and get to lead as many TV shows as he can. But that said, I also would love to see after Strange New Worlds is over that he makes one of these cheapo horror movies for A24 or Neon where he basically just plays Pike, the serial killer.
I would watch every incarnation of that.
Ideally, I'd just like it to be a tight one and done, but it would be hilarious if it turned into the jolly serial killer franchise. Speaking of franchises, Matt, one thing to go back to was you talked about Sam Kirk's living up to the Kirk family tradition of melodrama with this really elaborate maybe declaration he makes to his kids. But this episode also gives us this interesting idea that it's a Kirk family tradition of dying in space, right? This happened to Jim's dad, George. We know it's going to happen to Sam in the original series, although I guess in fairness, he's not in space, but he's going to be on a planet that's going to be attacked by parasites, right?
Yeah.
Did you like that idea of it being a Kirk family tradition to die or disappear in space?
Yeah. You left out one additional Kirk death, Bob, when he dies in Generations.
Yeah, that's true.
He gets sucked out of Enterprise B.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah, it's how he disappears into the Nexus at the beginning. That everybody understands is him dying. I'm glad you made that connection. I didn't make that connection at all. And then the other kind of interesting franchise element here is that we get this talk about Division 12, which seems to be Starfleet's X-Files. And Pike says he's referred 6 cases to Division 12, and they only came up with scientific explanations for 4 of them. I wasn't thinking this while watching the episode. I was just enjoying the episode. But I did see people online say that they're going to do an X-Files Star Trek spinoff. So I wanted to get your reaction to that.
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I'd be okay, if that would be that great.
It could work rather well, especially if you kind of get back to Star Trek's roots with Twilight Zone and Outer Limits sort of stuff. But on the other hand, given how poorly most of the new Star Trek performs to my mind that's not Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, I'm not really looking forward to it. If they're even actually thinking about doing it, it might just be a fun gag for this, right?
I think they're soured with the spinoffs considering the Section 31 TV movie and Starfleet Academy. Do you know if it was successful or not? Did you
I basically played the half of it a couple of weeks ago and I just read things while it was on.
Bob had it on in the background while he's reading books. Wow, that's impressive.
I was much more focused on the books. I doubt we'll ever get to it, but there's a Babylon 5 spinoff show called Crusade. And Crusade is not a terrible show, but it's not a great show. But their best episode is an X-Files parody. Oh man, let's see. Other things to wind up. So at the end, we have Spock and La'an and Kirk dealing with the horrible experience, right? So we already talked about Chapel giving Spock a house call, maybe a booty call too. And then we have Pike telling La'an a ghost story from his childhood. Then we had Uhura bringing Kirk cookies and milk. Of these three things, of medical treatment and maybe sex, a ghost story, and cookies and milk, what do you think is the better response to somebody dealing with grief, Matt?
Medical treatment, maybe sex.
All right, Matt knows what he wants.
Ghost story,
I like ghost story.
it was all right. Uhura bringing Kirk the cookies and milk, I don't know. I wish there was a TOS episode where she did that.
Now, Matt, if it were a ghost story and sex, then we'd really be good. Then in the grand horror movie tradition, Matt, at the end, we see La'an still haunted. Pike's strategy of just telling her a ghost story didn't work, maybe because he didn't throw in sex. Maybe the important missing element. But we see La'an looking out at the Griffin that the Enterprise is towing, and we see the ghost Harper from the Griffin making this gesture at La'an. Was that too much or just right for this horror episode?
It was right. I appreciated that because it went back to the beginning where you had the shuttlecraft windows. Now you've got the window on the ship, and it's a full circle type thing. It lets you know that entity's still out there.
Man, Division 12 is going to have a hell of a pilot as they get to the bottom of the Griffin.
They don't need an X-Files crossover. They need a Ghostbusters crossover.
Matt, the problem is, Bob, you're characterizing this as X-Files when it's much better understood as Ghostbusters.
That's right. We're going to build a dimensional rift that they can come through. I don't want them to have updated Ghostbusters from their century. No, they need to bring the ones from the 90s, the late 80s.
Man, Matt wants time travel as well.
Yeah, I need time travel in this too.
Matt's like, the problem with all these references that Pelia makes to Doctor Who is not that they're blatant and unsubtle. The problem is that they're the wrong franchise and it should be Ghostbusters. That's Matt's position. You remember that time when Pelia wore a brown janitor's uniform and carried a photon pack?
I do remember when she became a bug zapper for a while.
Oh, man. Watching Pelia do the interview scene from the first movie would be pretty funny. Believe in the myth of Atlantis? I've been to Atlantis.
That was a pretty good impersonation.
Thank you. Secretly, I am an old Jewish lady. That's the secret truth of me. So we already said our characters of the episode, Matt. You went with Sam Kirk. I went with Pike as Hannibal Lecter. I forgot last week to include reactions from that week's episode. Then when I was looking at reactions for this week's episode, there wasn't that much that was that interesting. Nobody was super witty on Serialized this week for this episode. Mostly people, it seemed to be split. Some people liked the horror trek. Some people didn't like the horror trek or thought it got too gory. There were a few complaints about the pacing of the episode, which wasn't something that I noticed or had a problem with, but it was a consistent complaint that I thought was interesting that people made. Also, I have such stupid reviews that are, I think, written by AI about Cape Crusader to talk to you about when we cover Cape Crusader. Oh my God, the fans of Cape Crusader are so stupid, Matt. They're so stupid. I can't wait. But before that, I did think it might be fun if we go back over some of the reactions from last week's episode. I thought you might enjoy those.
All right, Bob. All right.
You want to read them down, Matt?
Yeah, so the first reaction you got, Bob, is someone said, "Don't worry, guys. Genocide was necessary for our future. I can't wait for the Ellisons to go bankrupt or sent to hell."
Yeah, which that's a strong take. I don't feel that strongly about that episode, but I do agree that the Ellisons who own Paramount Plus are scum. And I do think it is unfortunate given the Ellisons' other political commitments that they did push an episode that is so pro-genocide as last week's. I don't like saying that about last week's Star Trek, but it is a little bit objectively pro-genocide. So yeah, I thought this comment was worth sharing.
You mean you didn't like that the protagonist just watched a genocide happen and that was the moral of the story?
Indeed. Really two genocides, although one of them was a self-inflicted one, but yeah. Ugh.
All right, Bob. The next reaction you have here is, anyone detect Rebecca Romaine doing a William Shatner impression?
Do you agree with that?
No? Did you?
I didn't catch it either. I just thought it was an interesting remark. And it is funny given that this week we do get Paul Wesley doing a William Shatner and also doing, I think to an extent, a Bruce Campbell impersonation.
The next comment was, halfway through, I was certain we were getting a Voth origin story.
Do you remember the Voth?
Yes, I do.
So that's the Voyager episode where you find out that the dinosaurs left Earth They evolved into intelligence and they got space travel. They left Earth and they wound up in the Delta Quadrant. It sounds dumb, but it's honestly one of the very best Voyager episodes. It's a great episode of Voyager.
We should have seen them transporting away in the background, like a ship or something leaving.
That would have been funny.
That was the last dinosaur hope. They're the ones who made it.
Krypton for this little Voth child will go to the Delta Quadrant, where because of the quality of the stars in the Delta Quadrant, he will be super Voth.
We don't know anything about the Borg. All right.
The last one is an incredibly negative comment that I don't agree with, but I thought was amusing, so I thought it was worth sharing. All these are from Serialized. If listeners don't remember what I was doing last season, I just go on the episode reviews on Serialized and I pull the ones I think are clever or interesting.
On par with the Voyager episode where they found Amelia Earhart, or the original series episodes where the Enterprise found Abraham Lincoln in space. Actually, that one's better than this. I'm a savage Curtin apologist. Now, this episode is at forgettable Voyager episode level quality. Dang.
I actually also think the Abraham Lincoln episode rules of original Star Trek, Savage Curtain. I think that episode rules. I don't think the Amelia Earhart episode of Voyager rules, the 37s, unfortunately. But that review made me laugh, even though I disagree with it, and I enjoyed this episode.
This episode is much better than your forgettable Voyager episode.
People are too hard on the Strange New Worlds Season 4 premiere. All right, Matt. To switch gears one more time, go back from Strange New Worlds premiere, back to Strange New Worlds Season 4, Episode 2. Since it was a ghost episode, Matt, I felt I would ask, you got a favorite ghost movie to throw at the listeners?
We've already mentioned Ghostbusters, of course, but that is more of a comedy horror type thing.
If it's your truth, you can just say Ghostbusters.
An actual ghost movie where you want to haunt a house, ghost type thing where you're going to be scared for real would be the Amityville Horror from the late 70s. Not any of the thousands of sequels that came out afterwards, or not the remakes, not all that. The original one with Margot Kidder and the dad of Thanos.
I didn't realize that Josh Brolin's dad was an actor, to be honest.
James Brolin.
And that's Josh Brolin's dad. Wow. Okay. You're going Amityville Horror, but really Ghostbusters. I'm going to say it's not my actual favorite, but it's a good sci-fi horror movie. Event Horizon seems to be the obvious recommend to the listeners, and much more in tune with the gory tone of this episode. Although you saying what you did make me think about Solaris and get real excited about Solaris from 1972. So I'll put the Soviet Solaris 1972 as my real choice, like Ghostbusters is your real choice.
All right. There you have it. We've given you 4 ghost movies to watch.
Yeah, that really sums us up, Matt, is that your deep enthusiasm is for Ghostbusters and my deep enthusiasm is for a Soviet science fiction film.
There you go. That's why you got me watching some Russian thing.
I really enjoyed making you watch Through the Stars by Hard Ways or Thorns. This has been Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. We are Uncanny Treks.
Thanks for listening, guys.